Good afternoon and welcome to Capital Account. I'm Lauren Lister here in Washington, D.C. These are your headlines for Friday, June 29th, 2012. European leaders have a breakthrough at their summit. They agree to more efforts to play debt hot potato.
Toss the spud back and forth, up high, down low, around and around. Don't get caught when the music stops.
Oh! Uh-oh, but hey, new schemes announced to try to help Spain and Italy avoid getting burned by the bond market. For now, to allow rescue funds to bail out banks directly in some cases, but
in the current climate, a credible perspective for the longer term is essential to restore confidence in the short term.
Wait, what was that, Mr. Van Rompuy? I know you were looking down, kind of under your breath, but what was that about needing a credible solution for the long term? Oh yeah, there's that. We'll talk about how it's going. And in the U.S., the personal savings rate rises to its highest since January. Couple that with virtually no real income growth, shown in numbers from the Commerce Department out today. And where is the economy headed? Or more importantly, where is it already? We'll ask Karl Denninger. He comes here all the way from Florida to our studio in D.C. today to tell us if this all adds up to recession. And yesterday's landmark Supreme Court healthcare ruling is being digested. We saw some healthcare and insurance winners and losers in the stock market yesterday. We've heard much of the politics deconstructed and can see a political battle on the horizon. But what about the economic one? We will break down the math. Let's get to today's Capital Account. All right, let's put Europe on hold for now. It's been taking up a lot of airtime. Let's talk about the U.S. for a minute. Let's look at what's brewing. Let's take a look at the increase in personal income in May, or lack thereof. So personal income increased a little more than $25 billion, or 0.2%. Disposable income increased $18.5 billion, also 0.2% in May. Personal consumption expenditures declined $4.7 billion, or less than 0.1%. So these numbers are flat. People aren't making much more, they're spending less, and they're saving more. In fact, coming in at 3.9%, this was the highest savings rate since January. So what does this mean? Are the already creaky wheels of the economy grinding to a halt? Does this confirm that? And on that note, speaking of the economy, what exactly does the healthcare Supreme Court ruling mean for the economy and the government's fiscal situation? Will it add up to the debt? Will it add to the debt or allow us to move forward and address our fiscal imbalances? Well, if you listen to what President Obama and his opponent Mitt Romney say, it'll do both.
Now's the time to keep our focus on the most urgent challenge of our time, putting people back to work, paying down our debt, and building an economy where people can have confidence that if they work hard, they can get ahead.
And even with those cuts and tax increases, Obamacare adds trillions to our deficits and to our national debt and pushes those obligations on to coming generations.
All right, so which is it, and what bigger issues, too, need to be pulled out of this decision? Here to talk about it is Karl Denninger. He is trader and author of Leverage, How Cheap Money Will Destroy the World, and he is here, which is so wonderful. Thank you for being in studio. What a pleasure. We usually speak from Florida.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lauren, for having me on.
Absolutely. The pleasure's all ours. So let's start with healthcare, because this was, the individual mandate was, in the Supreme Court decision, found to be a tax. What do you think of that aspect of this to begin?
It's frightening. If you think about what Chief Justice Roberts said, it was that what Congress had devised, which was to call this a penalty to get around two infirmities, the most important one being that direct taxes are barred by the Constitution unless they're apportioned, meaning they are in relationship to the census. Chief Justice Roberts said, oh no, that's not a penalty, now we're going to call it a tax, and this is how we make this entire law constitutional. The problem with doing this is that now Congress can do something like say, Mr. Car Maker, you must sell cars to everybody who is poor for $5,000. And if you don't, you have to pay a penalty, oops, it's a tax, of $25,000 per car. So Congress now has been given the power to compel any behavior by simply associating a tax with your failure to do whatever it is that they want you to do. The people on the right that have said that this is somehow a win for the rule of law and limiting of the Commerce Clause, they're out of their mind. There's no limit imposed on anything by Congress anymore. Now, literally anything that they want to do within the government, they can compel you to do under penalty of financial ruin. It's terrible.
So in your view, the biggest takeaway from this is the precedent you think it sets that this penalty has been deemed a tax, and therefore Congress can directly tax people.
They can tax anything. This is Bill Clinton's what is the definition of is. This is his decision on steroids. When he stood up and he made that statement, people just looked at it and said, wait, what? Now you've seen this from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court that has said whatever the 536 people here in Washington, our representatives, senators, and the president, whatever they decide to do, we will make legal. And we'll do it by saying, well, if you don't do it, then it's a tax.
What about the income tax? Because that is a direct tax.
Well, the income tax was made specifically legal by the 16th Amendment. So we had to have a constitutional amendment in order to have an income tax. But there is no constitutional amendment to put in place Obamacare. And that was the correct solution. If you want to rewrite the Constitution, then you rewrite the Constitution. You don't end run around it, and then when it's challenged, twist the language to come up with some way to not have to throw the law out.
And you say Congress was well aware of this during the whole Obamacare debate, that they called this a penalty because they knew that if they called it a tax, that could be struck down, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, there's plenty of evidence in the congressional record, in the debates, in the actual process of passing the law, that Congress was well aware that they could not impose this as a tax because of the direct tax prohibition. So as a result, they put this in place as a penalty. And when you read through the law, you find the word penalty or fee or you know, whatever have you. But what you don't find is the word tax. And there's a reason for that.
And you're saying that this is exactly it, but now that's null and void by the Supreme Court decision. So why was that the decision if it's unconstitutional for Congress to directly tax?
It seems to me that the Supreme Court had a preconceived notion of what they were going to do, and then they had to twist the language around to figure out how to do it. And the frightening part of this as a business person is, how do you know where this goes next? Where are the limits on federal power? If people say that this somehow limited federal power, that's absolutely wrong. This made federal power unlimited on an explicit basis. It's terrible.
Okay, so this is a dangerous precedent. You believe that the ruling sets in terms of what is a tax and what is Congress's ability to be able to levy one. What about in terms of health care? This bill, this law has been upheld. What does this do for individuals and businesses in terms of buying health care? Does everybody go get health care insurance now?
No, nobody gets health care insurance. There's no longer a penalty for not having it. You can't be denied insurance, nor can your price be increased if you wait until you get sick. So if the cost of your insurance is less than the cost of the penalty, tax, then the wise thing to do is to dismiss your health care insurance, just pay the penalty, and then if you get sick, go get the insurance. Well, if everybody does that, it's kind of like buying auto insurance after you have an auto accident. That's not going to work out very well.
Well, and it's not going to be very inexpensive to buy insurance if everybody's waiting until they're very ill to get it. So what do you think this does to insurance costs?
It makes them go to the moon.
And you think that's what will happen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it, because there's no incentive now to carry insurance. You can't be denied, nor can your coverage cost be increased if you get sick later on.
Because you're saying the penalty is much less in some situations than paying for insurance when you're healthy and when you're fine and when you don't need it for something dire.
Well, not only that, but the law says you can't have your cost increased later on if you're sick, nor can you be denied. So if your price is $500 per month if you're well, it's also $500 if you're ill. Of course, if the only people who are buying it are people that are ill, it's going to be $5,000, not $500.
Yeah, so that's concerning. Also, a lot of the criticism of healthcare the law from doctors that I've spoken to was that this didn't address the costs of healthcare, which are astronomical and which insurance companies largely dictate. So do you have a criticism of that, or what do you think of that?
Well, yeah, the real problem with the escalation of cost of healthcare is that you have monopolistic anti-competitive behaviors that are rampant throughout the industry. The American citizen pays for the development of essentially all new drugs and devices that are then used worldwide. Well, we're 330 million people. We can't possibly shoulder that cost. That is a big part of where this comes from. Another part of it is that there's no incentive for you to be healthy because it's divorced from your cost that you pay for health care. So if you are ill and you do things that tend to make you more ill, you don't end up paying a higher price. We've done nothing to address any of those considerations, and so the cost is going to continue to ramp, and my expectation is it's going to have a terrible effect on the federal budget.
Well, that's a question because I think that there's numbers that show different things. Okay, there's going to be savings here, there's going to be, it's going to add to the deficit and the debt there, but at the end of the day, these are all projections. I don't necessarily trust the CBO projections in general. So what do you see this doing to the fiscal picture for the government?
I think it doubles federal health spending within the next 5 years. Currently, we are spending about $820 billion a year at the federal government level. I think that the implementation of this law will easily double that to $1.5 trillion within the next 5 years and double it again in 5 more. We do not have the ability to pay even for the first one. So how long this goes before we have a fiscal crisis in this country is now the open question.
But where do those costs come from? Is that from the expansion of Medicaid? Is that from, what is that coming from?
It comes from Medicaid. The expansion of Medicaid is going to, by itself, according to the CBO, add about $400 billion over 10 years. I believe that is radically low. It also comes from the fact that we develop these therapies without any concern as to whether or not they are cost effective, and people demand them because everybody always wants the best. The question is whether or not we can afford to pay for it. And the answer sometimes, unfortunately, is no.
Well, won't this also disincentivize the best? Because what is the incentive for doctors to innovate or to create experimental treatments if that's not something that they would get reimbursed for under these new policies?
Well, the drug companies and the device makers will get reimbursed. They'll get paid whatever they ask.
So they're the winners in this.
For a short period of time. At the point at which the check can't clear, then everybody loses.
Right.
And you end up with a system that's rationed. Everybody was talking about death panels. Well, you have a situation somewhat similar to that in Canada. If you need a procedure, you go on a waiting list. When your name gets to the top, you get the procedure. If something bad happens to you first, well, that's most unfortunate.
So you argue the country can't afford it, and there are costs like that to people that you see down the line. Also, people can't really afford or don't want to pay for a lot in terms of spending right now. Incomes are flat, expenditures are flat, savings is up a little bit. Are we headed for recession? Are we in a recession?
Well, if you look at the two indicators that I like are the regional Fed surveys, primarily. Richmond and Philly are the two that I watch most closely. And we now have 2 months of bad data in both of those. 1 month is a warning signal, 2 is something to really pay attention to, and 3 is a trend. So if we have another bad set of reports next month, you're going to have everybody and their brother out calling a recession. I think when you look at the income and spending numbers, when you look at the Philly indicators, you look at the employment and the claims numbers that come out every week, my call is that we're already in one, and the official call will be made sometime towards the end of the year.
So you think we are in a recession? Just wait for some more bad data for everyone to be saying that. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we've heard the U.S., we know Europe is at a breaking point too. They've bought a little more time. Maybe we're going to talk about it in a moment with Karl Denninger, author and trader. Also, still ahead, you responded. I'll answer. Check out if your comment caught my eye this week in viewer feedback. But first, your closing market numbers.
What drives the world?
The fear-mongering used by politicians.
Who makes decisions?
Considerable breakthrough has already been made.
Who can you trust?
No one who is imbued with a global missionary zeal.
Where are we heading?
State-controlled capitalism is called fascism.
When nobody dares to ask, we do. RT, question more.
You know how sometimes you see a story and it seems so whole and complete, you think you understand it, and then you glimpse something else. You hear or see some other part of it and realize everything you thought you knew, you don't know? I'm Tom Hartman. Welcome to The Big Picture.
Welcome to the Alona Show. We'll get the real headlines with none of the mercy. The problem with the mainstream media today is that they're completely disconnected from the viewers and from what actually matters to those viewers. And so that's why young people just don't watch TV anymore. If they want news, they go online and read it. But we're trying to take those stories that people actually care about and transfer them back to TV.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk about Europe and what the big deal was about the summit that's still going on, or it was today at least. This is what the president of the European Council says.
We agreed on something new, which is a breakthrough, that the banks can be recapitalized directly in certain circumstances.
But what kind of breakthrough is that? Is that a good thing that there's a green light for direct bank bailouts in some cases, as they've agreed upon in Spain? Doesn't that just mean the debt is being shuffled around but not getting dealt with? What kind of a fix is that? Karl Denninger is going to tell us. He's trader and author of Leverage, How Cheap Money Will Destroy the World. And Karl Denninger, what was this big breakthrough and solution? Just buying Spain and Italy a little more time?
Yeah, pretty much. There's no breakthrough and solution at all. I mean, you've got two facilities to do this with, the EFSF and the ESM, one of which doesn't have any money in it, or essentially none, and the other of which hasn't been ratified yet.
Right, not even in Germany.
Yeah, so there's no money in one, and there's not a lot of money in the other. And the best part of it is that major parts of the contributions to go into these funds are going to come from the nations that are in trouble and are going to allegedly be bailed out. So this is very much like me taking a $20 bill out of my left pocket and putting it in my right pocket and claiming I'm $20 richer. That doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. But does it fool the markets for a little bit? And are we seeing a point of diminishing returns with these can-kicking efforts?
Well, sure. And this is a big announcement, so you got a big pop.
Today in the market.
Yeah, and so the market goes up and everybody cheers and everything's fine. Watch the bond rates over in Europe. They were down big today. All right, that's to be expected. But see how long they stay down, because what has happened is every time they come out with another one of these deals, we get, a few days, sometimes hours or minutes in a couple of cases, and then the market starts selling off again because people say, well, wait a minute, if I buy Spanish debt, how am I ever going to get paid? If all these guys are doing is shuffling money around, then at the end of the day, how are they going to pay me back? And what you have with Spain, Ireland, and Italy is a situation where all of these governments, despite the fact that they all claim, well, austerity, can't be done. The truth is that government cannot spend more than it takes in taxes, whether it's here or anywhere else. And when you do that, what you're effectively doing is destroying the purchasing power of everyone in the nation. So you can temporarily try to make up this black hole that you've created, but over time, how do you sustain an economy if the power to purchase things is being destroyed by everybody that's in the economy? Well, sooner or later you run out of money, right? And that's when it all comes apart.
Okay, and as far as the bond market, it seems like they need more and more of this drug of short-term fixes or short-term boosting confidence to get the same effect of not pushing Spain to unsustainable levels in their borrowing. As far as any kind of long-term fix about what you're talking about, which is the dynamic, that doesn't exist, does it?
No, there's been nothing that actually addresses the root cause of the problem, which is that the people in these nations, and here in America for that matter, need to have an honest conversation with their government. What services do you want government to provide to you? And then you have to pay taxes in order to cover all of those, not tomorrow, but in today's money. So that means that some part of the money you earn by going to work and doing your job has to go to the government to pay for these services. And if you're not willing to pay the taxes, then you don't get the services. That conversation is one that's very hard for politicians to have, because if you say to the Greeks, for example, fork up 25% of your income, or this particular program is going to go away, they say, well, we're not going to pay. And they have an underground economy and they evade paying, and then they cook the books to make it look like everything is okay when in fact it's not.
Well, I don't hear any of those conversations. I hear banking authority. I hear 120 billion euro for some kind of a growth program. I mean, even if these things are decided upon long term, are they solutions?
No, because what has happened is the banks have financed, in other words, brought forward the ability to have things today to be paid for tomorrow. But unless you can find a way to pay for them tomorrow, all that's happened is you've increased the total amount of debt, and no matter how low the interest rate is, you've increased the amount of interest you have to pay. Okay? So over time, this problem becomes worse. And this is why we continue to see the same dynamic play out. Yes, you get a little bit of relief, and then people start thinking about it and say, wait a minute, the debt is now, went from 62% to 72% of GDP or whatever it is. That means that the interest that's going to have to be paid is greater than it was a month ago. Why do we think that this should add confidence? This should subtract from confidence, and it does.
And why was oil up 9%, which we just saw today? Oil has been on a downward trajectory. Why did it shoot up today?
Because hot money loves somewhere to go that's speculative, and commodities are one of those places. And so when you have somebody that thinks that we're going to get currency debasement, which is essentially what borrowing more money is, then where do people go? They go into commodities. So you see moves in gold, you see moves in silver, you see moves in oil. And of course, the problem with moves in oil is that makes gas prices go up, which undoes this consumer flushness that you have, because now it costs more to fill your tank up to go to work in the morning.
And nobody likes that. No. And nobody is going to take a summer vacation if they can't afford the road trip, which you said you noticed on your road trip that you've been taking across the U.S. I appreciate you being on the show. That's all we have time for. Thanks so much, Karl Denninger, for being in studio. He's author and trader and a frequent guest from Florida. Thanks
Thank you very much.
All right, let's wind down with viewer feedback before we let you go for the weekend. A certain Orwellian reference has come up a few times this week with Nigel Farage when we interviewed him yesterday, talking about the Eurocrats' building blocks that they laid out for democratic legitimacy, or so they said. But first, it came up in Loose Change in a story where a judge said Goldman Sachs' rhetoric was channeling this famous Orwell novel. That's George Orwell's 1984, where words from authority are the exact opposite of what they mean.
It's the old inversion of the language to mean the very opposite to what the truth is.
In the case of bankers, loss is profit, freedom is debt, gambling is hedging. So this has really been a recurring theme, and one of our viewers, Philip CO, emailed me and was nice enough to look up the direct reference from George Orwell in response to my comment on George Orwell's 1985 on yesterday's show. It led him to look up that book on the shelf. Here's what Orwell had to say about the manipulation of words in the language of newspeak in the fictional future nation of Oceania. In the appendix, he wrote on the principles of newspeak some words, for instance, as joy camp, which was forced labor camp, or Minipax, or Ministry of Peace, which was really the Ministry of War, meant almost the exact opposite of what they appear to mean. Some words, on the other hand, displayed a frank and contemptuous understanding of the real nature of oceanic society. An example was prolifeed, meaning the rubbishy entertainment and spurious news which the party handed out to the masses. And our viewer said Dimitri's comment about CNBC in our show yesterday fits the definition of prolifeed, but you can be proud, meaning us here at Capital Account, that your show provides real news and information, which I watch as often as I can. Well, Philip, thank you dearly for that compliment there on the show, and that you looked up the actual Orwellian principles of newspeak for all of us to really understand that reference, because it seems to be coming up a lot lately. Let's move on. We had the mayor of Sandy Springs on this week, which is a city in Georgia that has successfully outsourced most of city government. Well, M. Bevix on YouTube wrote, "I would be concerned with privatized city government. Too much risk for cronyism. If attempted, all bids should be put online and the entire financials should be put out." You make absolutely a great point. This model opens up the possibility for no big contracts and cronyism, to be sure. Perhaps the kind of corruption you see at the Pentagon, for example. What drew us to this story was this town seems to be saving money and doing it well in their model, the way that they're carrying out. You heard what the mayor said in the interview. She said it's very important to write up a good contract, to encourage competition, and to keep contractors on their toes.
if the service is not delivered and all the conditions are not met by company, somebody else will be there to do the work.
Bye-bye company, but no, there's certainly no cure for bad management and corruption. Now, we also talked this week about how Barclays is settling over accusations, which they've fessed up to reportedly, that they were manipulating key interest rates, for one, to benefit their derivatives positions. Now, this caused average people, because this affects personal lending, personal debt, to pay more or less on their loans and debts during this time. Now, mind you, this is all for the bank's benefit, so recurring theme there. Well, Boohoo746 wrote, hello, the Federal Reserve is manipulating key interest rates. It is a banking cartel. Where is the outrage? Great point. The only difference is when the government does it, it's legal. So ponder that one for a while. And we do have outrage about the Fed all the time. So just look back on our shows if you're a new viewer. Now, I noticed a little YouTube war on our YouTube boards. We had Dr. Martinson on this week, who is always amazing and has so much insight to give. And Scott H. Park said, thanks for yet another outstanding interview with Dr. Martinson. As a suggestion, I would rather have listened to 5 more minutes of Martinson on precious metals than listen to Dimitri in loose change. I never watched the last 5 minutes of your videos for this reason alone. How did he manage to get a job? Who is he related to at RT? Okay. Well, he's not related to anyone, I can assure you. But I will actually defer to another viewer in defense of Dimitri, because Once Upon a Space did it so well. He said this. He's actually the show's producer, and a damn fine one. You could well argue that he should stay off screen himself, of course, but if you at all like the content of the rest of the show, you can be sure he had a lot to do with it. That is all very true. And as far as making the call to extend an interview, I totally hear you. It's always a game time decision, and Chris Martinson is obviously phenomenal. We'll try to have him on again to talk precious metals. As for loose change, contrary to your opinion, a lot of our viewers love it, so it's probably not going away anytime soon. And as the producer of our show, neither is Dimitri. On that note, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to come back next week. And in the meantime, you know you can follow me on Twitter at Lauren Lister. Give us feedback on the show or any that you missed at youtube.com/capitalaccount. You should also go subscribe if you haven't, and you know you can give us all of your feedback there, and I will read the very best of it and respond to it on this show. Now, you can also catch our show in HD on Hulu at hulu.com/capital-account. Do not forget to come back Monday. We have an amazing emerging markets expert who you haven't heard from, a new guest on our show who has some very interesting insight about maybe what you could call the emerging markets. But until then, from everyone here at Capital Account, thanks for watching and have a great night.